Hello, everyone. Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Eunoia podcast, where we bring you conversations with people who are transforming lives through passion, creativity, and purpose. I'm your host, Nafirisa Tariang, and joining me in conversation is one of Shillong's most celebrated musicians, composer, and the visionary founder of the Aroha Choir. Through her remarkable musical journey, she has not only mastered the art of the piano, but she has touched and nurtured countless lives, proving us that music has the ability to heal, transform, and connect hearts across cultures and generations. Join me in welcoming the incredibly talented Mrs. Pauline Wadri. Thank you so much, ma'am, for having this conversation with us. We are immensely grateful to you. And before we delve deeper into the psyche of an artist, I would like to jumpstart this conversation. Very basic question. So, as you hark back to your childhood days, when was the time when you first touched the piano or when you played your first musical piece? Did it awaken the artist within you? And did you realize back then that the piano was going to be an inseparable part of your life?
Oh, absolutely. But first, I want to just say thank you for including me in this conversation. It's an honor to be part of your podcast. Yes, indeed, the piano awakened in me a deep musicality which I didn't know I had. I was 6 years old when I was taken to see The Sound of Music, and I started picking up the tunes, Do a Dear. And I remember people rushing into the room to see who was playing because I just found the notes on the key of C. And from then on, there was, no stopping me. I would try to pick out tunes that I heard. And in my mind, I was always living in a movie, imagining the sounds coming from the trees. And so I was a little Julie Andrews in my imagination. Yeah, so that's how it began.
So you were always you've given into those flights of imagination ever
That's
since
right.
you were a young girl.
Yes.
So, talking about the Aroha Choir, when was that defining moment, when the concept or the vision of the choir first took shape in your mind?
For many years, well into my teens, I was always fascinated by the human voice. And I found that piano playing was a rather lonely affair. So I actually wanted to work with different instruments. But since I play only the piano, I found the next best thing was to work with human voices. So my younger brother Neil and I, we both had this fascination, and we would try out duets and trios, and being part of the church choir, singing in harmony was very fascinating for me. But I didn't know how and where to start. So of course it began with the church choir, and it was only after, I think I was in my late 30s when I started teaching in the Kodaikanal International School, and accompanying the school choirs, watching professional directors lead a choir, just sparked an interest and awakened in me something that was waiting to bloom. And the ideas that I had, the confusions that I had about how to blend voices, they were kind of, bit by bit unfolding as I watched and other people work, and as I attended conferences on, working with choirs. So it's been a long journey, but I took the plunge when my brother wanted to start a choir. So at that point, he was living in England, and I had gone to England for a workshop. And he said, "How about we start a choir where we teach people to sing, Mozart and Bach?" And I thought it was a little bit mad because all we did was just sing from the hymns, four-part harmony. And how are we to be able to teach a choir that cannot read at all? And he said, well, we can teach them how to read, but we can start maybe by rote, and we'll take it from there. And interestingly enough, the workshop that I had was attending at that point was a jazz workshop run by jazz musicians, but one of them was a choir director as well. Excuse me. And he had the idea of teaching his choir to memorize music, to stop using the sheet. And here we were doing the opposite, and I thought to myself whether this would work. And the thing is, you'll never know if it works or not unless you try. So the rest is history. My brother, long distance, started the Shillong Chamber Choir. He, whenever he came to Shillong, he would interview people, and I think altogether we interviewed auditioned rather, about 1,000 singers, and from 1,000 singers, we kind of whittled down to 40 singers. So that's how it began. And in the meantime, I was living in Bangalore, so I started my own choir. So that was the first Aroha. And I used the same method of first teaching them by rote and then also simultaneously teaching them how to read. And at first they found everything very difficult, but suddenly they understood, the counterpoint of Bach and the richness of Handel's Messiah, and turning Khasi songs, merging them, fusing them with Bollywood songs, and fusing them with operatic structures. So that was a huge journey, it was a big leap forward. So that's how the Aroha Choir came into being, first in Bangalore.
Such a beautiful journey, because at the end of the day, it's creativity that fuels your desires to do so. And it just lends credence to the fact that a change becomes a possibility, a dream becomes a possibility, only when you have the courage to take the first step. So the word Aroha, the name Aroha, is so beautiful and it sounds very unique. What does the name signify to you, and how does it perfectly embody the identity of the choir?
Like I said, the first Aroha choir was in Bangalore. And we were trying to come up with a name because the choir was a kind of a microcosm for, the entire nation. We had people who were from Delhi, some from Karnataka, some from Kerala, some from Tamil Nadu, some from Manipur, from Nagaland, from Meghalaya. So I was thinking of the name that best suited a choir that represented the nation. So we came up with the Sanskrit word Arahan, which means the ascending scale or the gathering of knowledge. So since people didn't quite know how to pronounce it, we kind of, people were saying Aroha, Aroha, so we changed it to Aroha. And we also learned that it means love in Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand. So we thought that makes it even more international. So that's how the name stuck.
So it's more than just a vocal ensemble. It actually represents love and a sense of diversity and unity.
Yes, yes. Learning to work together, because we have people of all faiths, all kinds of um, walks of life, economic status. So we have some from very wealthy families, then we have a very middle of the road families. We also had quite a few children from disadvantaged groups. So that really brought out love and compassion and trying to live together in unity. Of course, I mean, we don't present a perfect picture. There have always been ups and downs and people who don't get along. But it taught us a lot about life and, how your rough edges are smoothened when you work with people who are very different from you.
So that reminds me of one of the celebrated pianists of the 21st century, Arthur Rubinstein. So he said that if you love life, life will love you back. If you love people, people will love you back. So from what I've noticed is that your music has always reflected warmth, love, and a deep sense of community. So how has your love for people shaped you as a human being, as a musician, and as a composer?
Well, happy to say that the values that my parents instilled in us was a welcoming home, a heart that felt for other people's needs, and of course, music comes in as well. So I remember the times when we were growing up, there was always music in the house, but it was accompanied by food.
Mm-hmm.
So the secret of my choir, especially the one that won the international award, I jokingly say was, the way to their hearts is through their stomachs. So, because young people are always hungry, and when they come into, the room for practice, they come in hungry, they come in tired, but when they have a cup of tea or they have something filling to eat, they're ready to sing. So that is a very basic need, but it is also a very profound need. And I find that when we have an open home, an open ear, sometimes children come to you with a very heavy heart. Something may have happened at home, or they have anxieties about separation from parents, or difficulties they encounter in school or with their siblings or friends. And a listening ear always helps. And when we sing, the words of the song, because we choose songs from many, many subjects, songs of love, songs of discipline, songs that talk of being brave. They kind of speak even before you say anything. The words themselves speak to the students. So through the discipline of listening, of trying out harmonies, of working on the keyboard, they all work together to bring out, this kind of an order in the chaos of emotions.
That's so beautiful, and something which is something to take away with for the audience as well. So, I was so intrigued to have read the fact that the choir has performed in one of the grandest choral festivals in the world, the Llanglwyd Lend 71st International Music Eisteddfod in Wales. So, what was your experience like? And did you see how music dissolved the boundaries between cultures there?
Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. I mean, to me, it feels like, it's too long.
Mm-hmm.
The gap has been too long, but I relive those memories. It was a huge struggle. To take 20 people across the ocean
Mm-hmm.
to raise the funds. It was an overwhelming task. But even before that, just getting the scores together, the right repertoire, um, helping these children to cope with their studies, to divide their time between test exams and rigorous singing. It was like preparing for a marathon,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not only spiritual, mental, it is also a very physical thing. So you can imagine the kind of forethought that had gone into this, getting the kids straight from school, making sure that they eat properly, because diet plays a very important part in it's just like preparing them for a sporting event. What you eat, how you digest it, how much water you drink, um, finishing your homework, getting everything ready, and still manage to perform at the highest level. So that was a huge experiment, and at times I thought I had bitten more than I can chew. But we did manage, and one drawback was visas. It was, coming from a country like India, that they were very strict about, scrutinizing who was doing what. And unfortunately, two of my best singers couldn't get visas at the last time, at the last moment. So it was things like that that we had to grapple with. So it was not only the singing. I wish I could have just concentrated on the singing and let somebody else do, the paperwork. But I think that is not a luxury a choir director can always have. So, when I talk about this, I want to paint a very realistic picture. But in all this fundraising, I just saw how a community can come together. We had some of my husband's friends who heard the choir, were so moved that one of them sponsored the entire trip for a student. Another one sponsored half the amount, and others gave whatever they could. I had even my own servants giving in 100, 200 rupees because they felt even a drop in the ocean matters. So it was not only about the singing, but it was a sense of pride, a sense of doing things together. So we had these little receipt books asking for donations. So friends took them and they were not ashamed, to ask for 500 rupees, 1,000 rupees. So whoever could pitch in did. And we had to raise almost 50 lakhs for the entire thing without help from the government or from any agency. So it was entirely funded by friends. And we also had the Khasi community in London who pitched in and gave us the last bit, and they put in quite a lot. So I'm so grateful to them as well. So it's not only about the music, but it's about coming together, doing something to bring the level of performance to such an international level. That was mind-boggling to me, because we started out at zero, literally. I mean, we started out with a choir that had to be whittled down to just 20 singers, because the harmony, the tight harmonies that you heard, and that you had to sing in different languages, and that was such a high bar to overcome. So it was a challenge. I would love to do it again, but I don't want to go through the fundraising. That was no fun. Pun intended.
Yeah. It must have been a really daunting task, to shoulder all of these responsibilities. But
Yes.
I suppose it had really affirmed your purpose as the founder of the choir.
That's right. Yes.
So the Welsh have this word called Heraeth.
Uh-huh.
Heraeth, it means that longing, for a place, a home, a time, a moment that may not fully return. So do you believe that every musician, they carry that space or a place or anything, that becomes part of their artistic identity? And if so, is there one, and how does it still resonate in your memories, and how does it fuel your creativity even today?
You hit the spot. Musicians, I mean, not only musicians, but I think all human beings, and especially artists, have that little longing for eternity. So the Bible talks about how God has set eternity in our hearts. So there's a God-shaped vacuum which we try to fill with all kinds of creativity. And I think the more we create, the more we understand the heart of God, because He is the master creator, He is the master artist and musician. So I do believe that there is that longing for eternity, the longing for an eternal spring of youth. We all want to be young. We hold, all the movies that we create, we try to hold on to a certain age in our lives. And that stems from this longing for the eternal, the longing for bliss. So we do, I think our journey in life, whether it is writing a song, whether it is uh, arranging flowers in a vase, whether it is planting a garden, or whether it is dressing beautifully or cooking a wonderful meal, I think all comes from that longing. So that is something that I try to instill in my students, to reach for the stars, to do things that lie latent in their spirit.
That is very insightful and something that we all can ponder upon. So We live in an age where we are constantly bombarded, with short form digital content, and that is attributed to our short attention span. So, how have you noticed the changes? Where students they often grapple with appreciating the depth and the discipline of learning a musical instrument in today's age.
Yeah, I worry a lot about people being glued to their phones. I have to fight the temptation of reaching for my phone the minute I wake up, and I guess it's a universal problem. Now, what I've seen, at least with the students who come, I think they're sent here by their parents to learn this discipline of learning an instrument, whether it's their voice or the piano or the guitar. I find that the ones who are really seeking are quite motivated. I think perhaps it's looking at a song on YouTube or TikTok or something that makes them want to get better or to reproduce that song, either on the keyboard or to sing it. So I find those who are motivated can sit through with their practices. And a lot of it depends on what kind of background they come from, how well they're being monitored at home. So, unfortunately, because they're so used to the screen, with just shots, I think if they, I don't know, it's just an idea I have. If they can be monitored on the use of the phone, their concentration levels will also increase. But having said that, I find that those who are really motivated will practice, because I find a lot of my students are practicing and getting better in a very short time. So those who are practicing are not really glued to the phone. So it's a paradox, because on one hand, they are able to concentrate because they've seen something on YouTube and they want to get to that level. On the other hand, if they spend too much time not practicing and glued to the phone, then that defeats the purpose of why they wanted to come for music lessons in the first place. So I think I take it as a step by step, everyday progress. So which is why I ask them to keep journals, practice journals, to see how much time they spent on practicing rather than the phone. So I think that's another step forward.
So, music, it nurtures that kind of thinking, and which I believe will carry over to other areas of their life because it.
Yes, yes. In fact, that's called the transference of skills. So that's one of the things we teach in instrumental pedagogy, is the transference of the skill that you learned or the discipline that you learned into your music. And I find that people who use music as a tool of memorizing, it helps, because music is stored in a very deep part of the brain. And I find that the songs that you learned as a child, you never forget, or even the pieces that you learned as a child. So if people can learn to use music to memorize, points in their studies, if it's a chemistry formula or a mathematical formula, it really helps. And talking of what kids are watching on YouTube, I find there's a wonderful program called Number Blocks. And my grandson, who's 5, can recite his 12 times table because it's in song form. So I think music can help very much in that aspect if you watch the right programs.
That's so true. Because our artificial intelligence is beginning to compose music, to imitate voices, and also to arrange musical arrangements within seconds. So, as a musician and a composer, do you think AI is a threat to the soul of music, or is it just another tool in the hands of musicians?
Well, when I first learned about how you can write songs, in fact, I've heard songs which were shared on WhatsApp. I remember when there was that terrible tragedy of the a young doctor who was murdered in West Bengal, and people were sharing messages and songs about what happened there. And I found one song which people were saying was very beautiful. And when I listened to it, something stirred within my heart. I said, "It's beautiful, but it doesn't sound real." And my misgivings were correct, because it was AI generated. So immediately I felt a sense of dread, because now what you can do is you can just give your ideas to AI, and just prompt it to do, give it a key signature and tell it what to do, and it can create a song for you. So on that count, I feel that we are really threatened, because music should come from your soul. It should not come from a little prompt that can make music in 5 seconds and 10 seconds. So people who want to be true musicians have to go through the entire process, step by step. It takes years, which AI cannot replace. So on that count, I feel a sense of alarm. Of course, I still feel it is too soon to give my full opinion, and I don't think anyone can say for sure what kind of a threat AI poses. It can be helpful, but as of now, to have these kind of shortcuts will not make you a musician.
Exactly, because mastery takes time.
Oh, yes.
And, AI cannot really fully capture the emotional depth that stems from lived experiences. And it cannot replicate the emotions that musicians bring to performances.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I also feel that if you are so dependent on AI, and this kind of music is fed to the general public, as of now, people still cannot differentiate between artificial music or music that has been composed through experience, and but I feel that there is a niche of listeners who can spot the artificiality of the music. So I'm hoping that niche will grow, and there will be more and more people who look for live music. And I hope that live music will make a comeback. So I think those of us who are making real music need to stay within that niche, and not look for too many likes. So that's what I warned my students. Be real. Don't get into the market simply because you're looking for likes. I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to improve. I'm still trying to improve what I do. But if the criteria is the number of likes you get, I think that is a danger signal for us. So we have to be true to our calling, true to that God-shaped vacuum, that search that we want for truth, for integrity, for what's the other word? Reliability, authenticity. That's what I was looking for.
That's a beautiful message, ma'am, especially to the young musicians out there who feel that, AI generated music or technology will diminish their place in the musical world.
Yes. So my message to them is, be real. You need to form a community of like-minded people. So like, we're having this podcast today. That is for me a boon. It is a real encouragement to know that there are people who are looking for authenticity. So for youngsters, it's vital that they form these friendships that are real and lasting. Find people who will support you in doing the real thing, and not clamoring. Don't join the rat race. Because for a time, the rat race may look very attractive, but then it will not stop you from becoming a rat. So be real, surround yourself with people who are looking for truth and authenticity, and together we will preserve our heritage.
This is so beautiful because for a choir that is rooted in emotions, humanity, and a deep sense of community, we cannot get lost in this. You still maintain or preserve the human essence of music in this AI driven world. And coming to the next question, we often talk about IQ and academic excellence, but emotional intelligence is just as essential for a meaningful life. So, how has music taught you self awareness, resilience, and also empathy? And how have you passed those lessons on to your students?
It's a day by day experience, it's an hour by hour experience. And like I said, when you surround yourself with people or you try and keep in touch with people who are authentic, you take the journey step by step, day by day. So we have to be realistic. There are days when we don't feel like practicing. What do? We just go ahead and do it. There are days when life's burdens seem too much to bear. Then you have to go back to the original message. God says in all his encounters with humans, the first thing he says is, fear not. So fear is a universal enemy. And we must not listen to the voice of fear. And if we go on day by day, just reaching out for hope, there are three things which remain: hope, faith, and love. And out of these three, love is the greatest. And what is love? Love is actually not merely an emotion. It's love for the things you do, love for the things you uh, like, love for people you meet, love for people you don't even like. That is love. Love even for the music that you don't want to work so hard for, but you take it step by step, day by day, and you take it hour by hour sometimes. And it is really a discipline. So you boil it down to very hard facts. It's a discipline. You work at it step by step, and then the emotions will follow. And when you put a piece of music together, whether at a performance or whether you're writing out by hand or whether it's a painting that you're doing, the finished project will emerge as something that you worked on for hours or days or years even. So that's the way forward. Uh, the emotions will follow the actions. So that is my message to people who want to find out how, in this chaotic world that we live in, how the emotions can be brought out through music. It's hard work, but it also brings with it motivation if you stick around long enough.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing that because, as you rightly said, that love encapsulates the essence of everything. And if you love your life, if you love people around you, if you love what you do, that even what you do should be a labor of love, then the world will turn into a better place.
Absolutely. Yes.
So most people think that creativity is just for artists, but how can you challenge that perception?
Oh, we are musicians who need an audience. And I am so happy that we have an audience who love to come and listen. That itself is an act of art. Because when you go to a performance or when you view a painting or buy a painting, or even if you buy flowers, for example, if you plant a garden, these are all acts of art. And there is always an engagement because you have an object and you have um, a person who will react to that object or who will create that object. So for musicians, you need followers. And those followers are part of your world. And together, you enjoy the experience. Those who listen and those who perform, they're together in this rapturous performance or the consummation of the art itself. And you have people who write to you and say, why don't you do this song? I've had many a time, like the last time we had that terrible tragedy of the lady who killed her newly wed husband in Sora. So somebody asked if I would do the song Shillong, just to encourage people. There was so much negativity, and because of these requests, it made me delve into that song and record it and actually bring people to do the song and actually talk about what drives people into crime and what we can do to avoid driving people into such acts of cruelty. And so it brought about a discussion of the realities that children face in life. The kind of things they consume on their phones that drives them to do all kinds of things which we wouldn't imagine, even 10 years ago. So one song can dig up all kinds of needs that need to be addressed. So art is all about life and really is a commentary on social life.
Yes, art, it mirrors life and it
Yes.
draws all these people together, to analyze or to approach challenges from different perspectives.
That's right.
So, talking about one of your performances, that production Traffic Jam.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who would listen to that, they will not only see a group of talented singers, but also confident performers. So, through that production, was one of your underlying motives is to cultivate self-belief and confidence in your students, because most students, they often struggle with confidence and that fear of being seen and judged. So take us through your creative process.
Yes, well, in the early years, I would audition only people who had potential to maybe represent the choir in a competition. But of late, I've had more and more requests for children to be able to join the choir simply to boost their confidence. And I've respected that because I see that I have to focus on character building. So one of the things that we do is to get the children to act out scenes. And when we did Traffic Jam, it was mostly their ideas. And they would suggest and say, oh, why don't you put this little one who hasn't had a part in singing, and she will be the busy one who says, I don't need a lift because it's quicker to walk. So the humor aspect of it came out. And then we had children who didn't want to sing but wanted a minor part, and that really helped because by the next video that we did, the children who had a small part wanted a bigger part. So of late, what I'm doing is there are children who just don't want to do solos. So, but they find they can rap. So we're going to do a video where we will teach. It'll be a many part series where we share with our viewers how to read music. And so one of the aspects of reading music is also having fun, doing a rap on how we read notes and introducing the notes. So on Saturday, we had a little competition. We broke up into about 4 or 5 groups. And I was amazed at the youngsters who last year wouldn't even greet another person, with a loud hello. Everything was very subdued. And now these people are, dancing to the beat and being a little naughty sometimes and being so creative with the material that they have. Because many a time, if you give them instruction, they may not understand it. But if it is something that comes out of their own imagination, it really helps them to, to be themselves. So that for me is another exciting part, which I'm hoping to develop more and more in the months to come.
I'm really fascinated by how you've created this a safe space, for students to discover their own voices and for self-expression. Because at the end of the day, creativity blossoms in environments where curiosity is celebrated.
That's right. Yeah. So the children who last year were not able to even utter a word, and were not, very shy of greeting the others, because, they come from different schools and they're from different age groups. One of the things that I reiterate in choir is that this is a safe place. So you touched, a very salient point there. It's a safe place. Uh, I encourage them right from the time they walk in through the gates to look out for those who seem to need help. So it shouldn't be like a school, our normal Indian schools where you're pulled up because you don't know something. So when they're out with they're taking out their reading books, because I teach them how to read music as well as sing. I ask them to look around to see who needs help. And they should be sensitive to the one who's struggling, so they point out which bar they're in, and sing to them the note that they're missing, and to, without being asked, to just look out for somebody who needs help, and to pair themselves up in groups where they can be more of help. So I think that so far so good. They're they're encouraging one another, and the word is spreading, because every Saturday I get a new request for a new admission, because a cousin will go and tell another cousin about so much fun that they're having, and why don't you join the choir, and we can learn something new. So that for me is very encouraging.
Like I said, the Aroha Choir is more than just a vocal ensemble. It is a community of singers, who do not believe that music is just about hitting the right notes. It's about listening, collaborating, growing together, and
That's right.
telling stories through harmony. So I've heard one of your songs, Kajing Duai, commemorating the 52nd anniversary of Meghalaya statehood.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That has not had very many views, but I'm glad that you had a look at that.
I'm curious to know, why did you choose Kajing Duai, a prayer, as the overarching theme and not just celebration itself? And what does it mean, to hear these young voices performing a song celebrating their homeland?
It's a prayer because I feel the odds are overwhelming. In the face of rampant corruption, and one feels an overwhelming sense of despair. And what can we do when we despair? We pray. Because prayer is not an empty sound of words, but prayer is reaching out to God to do what we can't do. And when we do whatever we can do in praying, He will fill in the rest. And I believe that a prayer invites a community. Because I looked at the comments, and a lot of people, I think jokingly or seriously, were saying this should be the state anthem, because it's a prayer. I remember people fighting for Hill State. The kind of leaders that we had who formed the state were, if not free from corruption, but relatively very aware of leading a state in integrity. And some of those leaders I knew personally. For example, Stanley Nichols Roy made a huge impact in my life, because when he stood for elections, he did not give his supporters money, and no alcohol was given, and he won the elections without that. And I saw firsthand how a leader can live a life which is authentic, which is full, which has a vision for the future. And I thought, if one leader can do it, another one can join him. So that was my prayer, that God would raise leaders who are not afraid to call a spade a spade. And it really is wisdom to be able to live a life which is free from corruption. Because, in the end, we live one life. God has given us one stomach. Our needs are really very small. And if we discover the joy of just living a life that is free from wanting more than you need, there's so much to enjoy. So that was my prayer. And I believe that God will answer that prayer. whether now or at a later time. And I think the girls who were singing it were really moved by the lyrics.
It was hauntingly beautiful, and it was a prayer that was an awakening to our new generation, and also a reminder of the set of principles that the state was steeped in.
Yes.
So, if you were to compose another song for every child in Meghalaya would hear growing up, what would its message carry?
I wish for every child to have all the basic rights to life, which many of our children don't. And I feel very emotional when I think of children who come. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be like this. But children have a right to happiness, to a decent upbringing, to both parents being in the house, to education. They must have enough food to eat. They must have a lot of love. It sounds like a utopia that I'm painting, but I believe in the basic right of all children to be free from abuse, to be free from all kinds of violence. That's my prayer for all the children of Meghalaya, that they will grow up strong, they will grow up believing in themselves, they will be humble, they will be brave. That is my wish. And thank you for reminding me, because I still need to write that song. And I should do it quickly. And much of my music has been to raise funds for the underprivileged. And the last fundraiser we did was for a hospital that would care for the needs of the poor. But I find that even hospitals are losing their mission, their sense of mission, because there's too much of a sacrifice involved. And I get that, because I ask myself, am I ready to sacrifice, to sacrifice what I demand of other people? Am I ready? That is a question I ask myself, because if I do, then I have to write the songs that I do. So it's really working with myself, and I can't do it alone, which is why, like I said, I must surround myself with like-minded people. I must reach out to people who have the same vision, or maybe who have a better vision. People who can teach me, who can be along with me in the journey. And I find that it's an ongoing process. And that is my prayer, that we will find younger people who will go along this way and who will build society with the same fervor.
I'm exceedingly moved, to hear your message, because I'm sure it's going to be a very thought-provoking song. It is the need of the hour, because children don't deserve to be victims of circumstances.
That's right.
Most of them, they have stolen childhood, and they grow up, turning into adults that are scarred and traumatized and carrying the weight of something which, if not, should not have been their weight to carry.
That's right. So I remember my brother wrote a song, which I think I should bring out soon. It's called What a Child Needs. It was, I think this was in 2000 and I forget the year, 2002, I think. It was recorded in Bangalore, but the video has not been made. And the children who sang, of course, are, it was a 7-member choir. They were called the Shillong Boys Choir. And I helped them get to Switzerland, and they sang the song in this place called Ko. It's about 20 minutes from Montreux. I have never seen an audience of about, I think it was 500 in the big hall of this place in Co. I have never seen people weep at a concert. The boys sang, and I was, of course, I was an alto in, I was taken in because we didn't have all the boys there. There were just 4 or 5 boys. And my brother was on the piano, and we had a few international musicians, and we just strung along the parts very hurriedly the previous night, and we did this performance. The words just spoke to this audience of people from about more than 32 countries. And I've never seen people hug each other and ask each other for forgiveness and just, melt into each other's arms because of the song. So the song goes, what a child needs is love. They don't need you to tell them they're bad. They need a lot of love. I won't say too much about the song because it will speak for itself. So I hope to bring it to life. You've kind of woken up these memories within me, and that's one song I would definitely like to do again.
That will carry a really powerful message.
Yes.
And your experience of the concert, it testifies to the fact that music is a universal language and it could really dissolve the boundaries between cultures. So we shall now segue to the last part of this conversation and talking about your brother. I mean, Neil Nonkindry had transformed the choral landscape in India, with the SEC making waves across the nation. Before the world knew him as a maestro, what was he like, as a child? Did you notice the first time that he embodied those traits that somehow might have been overlooked by others?
I don't think they were overlooked in the sense that he just shone. When he was 3.5, I tried to get him to play the piano, and it was this very piano which is in my living room. I tried to get him to play chopsticks, and he just picked it up, and I was so amazed because I picked up the piano when I was 6, and here was this child who was just 3.5. So I taught him whatever I knew. He didn't like to read, and I didn't like to read at that point, so I couldn't teach him how to read. But he was so amazing because everything I knew, he would just pick up, and even improve on it. And he was always so creative, whether it was just playing the piano or singing or even painting or doing sketches. I remember showing him, how to copy, just looking at objects. And, I'm not much of a sketcher myself, but I do like to draw a few things. And just showing him things like that. And he just went on to develop such a good hand at painting and especially sketching, and eventually sculpture and things like that, which he picked up in his school in England. So he was very, very creative. And not only that, very very humorous, very naughty. He was a prankster, and I think that comes from my grandmother, who was herself a prankster. And I think she had traits which were overlooked. But well, Neil may have had things that were overlooked in the sense that when he was in school, um, they didn't really, he wasn't really chosen for solo parts and acting and things like that. So those things may have been overlooked. But as a pianist, he shone wherever he went. And it was only later that, he took to composition, because I wasn't very good at writing at that point. And even I learned how to read and write much later in life. But he managed to do whatever he could when he went to England.
He had made an indelible impact in the society and in the country at large. So your lives tell a remarkable tale, of two siblings united by passion, purpose, and service. So looking back, what was the greatest gift that he gave you, not as a musician, but as a brother?
It was his bravery, dare to do things. And I think in turn, I think he learned to be brave from what I did too. He used to say, "Oh, you're so bold." There are pieces I'd try which were not really within my reach, but I'd try them anyway. And I think that in turn encouraged him. And he reached for the stars because trying to go to England was a very big step, because my father would say, I can't afford to send you abroad. So he had to go on his own means, try for scholarships and things like that, because we just couldn't afford it. So I would encourage him, and he would say, "Thank you for helping me to do things which I would not have dared." So in turn, uh, he trying to start the Shillong Chimbu Choir, which I thought was a mad idea at that point, was something which I always look back to. And whenever I'm afraid to try something, I just think, I said, we pulled that one off. Surely this one will work. And anyway, even if I fail, at least I tried. So that was the greatest gift that I got from my brother.
And I'm sure it's something that will always nestle somewhere amongst your memories.
That's right.
So at Eunoia's Academy, we believe in empowering voices. We believe that every child has a unique voice waiting to be discovered. So what is your message for every student out there who's too afraid to speak up, or they feel that they're not enough?
My message would be, don't be afraid, but be realistic. Many kids would like to be something maybe they're not meant to be, and they get discouraged when they try a song and they don't sound like their favorite pop artist, and then they think, "Oh, I'm no good." The thing is to find your own voice. Even if you don't sound like what you aspire to be or you try to be, it doesn't matter, because maybe you're meant for something else. So don't give up trying. Look for different avenues. You have that creativity within you, which only you are capable of. No one can be like you. It may be a gifting which may not be so public. So don't be afraid to reach for the stars, because there is only one you, and you have to celebrate your uniqueness. So my message is, don't be afraid. Keep trying. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. Try something else. But choose your friends wisely. Choose friends who will help you to be the person you are meant to be.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we shall now round off this insightful conversation with the last question. Eunoia's Academy is actually, it's derived its name from the word eunoia. It's a Greek word which means beautiful thinking. So what is beautiful thinking to you?
Well, beautiful thinking is something which I can take from what the Apostle Paul said, to think on things which are pure, things which are of a good report, things which are true. So that for me is embodies beautiful things in its entirety. It cannot be beautiful if it is not true. And if it is worth spending your time thinking about it, do it only if it's pure, if it's true, and if it's of a good report.
Thank you once again, ma'am, for sharing your grain of thought, your wisdom, and your beautiful journey, which will undoubtedly inspire our viewers. So, as we come to the end of today's conversation, one message is clear: that music is not just about hitting the right notes, it's about communication, it's about touching people's lives. So, through Mrs. Pauline Wadri's journey, she has shown us that true artistry is not measured by accolades or applause. It is measured by the lives we touch, the communities we build, and the legacy we choose to leave behind. She has shown us that as a musician, as a founder of the Aroha Choir, that when passion meets purpose, music becomes the force for transformation. Thank you so much for tuning in on the Eunoia Academy podcast. Keep listening, keep growing, and do not be afraid by the sound of your own voice. This is your host, Nafirisa Tariang, signing off. See you again in the next episode.